Hi, I'm Jessica Warren, and I will be sharing with you our local program utilizing stormwater green infrastructure practices to mitigate flooding and educate the public. So I serve as the County Extension Coordinator and Agriculture and Natural Resources Agent in Camden County, so on the very bottom of the coast on the Florida line. And if you're not familiar with cooperative extension, what we do is we are a public service and outreach unit of the University of Georgia. And in particular for my program, I disseminate research-based information to the public. I help with landscape issues, gardening issues, insect issues, sustainable landscaping practices, pollinator protection, wildlife, pond, forestry, you name it in the realm of ag and natural resources. And our job is to basically educate and help guide the public using good information. So at our office, we had a bit of a situation. As you can see here, this is a normal storm event on the front of our building. This debris that you see on the left-hand side of the picture here is actually floating on top of quite a few inches of water up against the foundation of our building. We have a parking lot that slopes very slightly, but slopes towards our front doors. And during a lot of our routine coastal storms, thunderstorms, rainstorms, we would have water come in the front two doors of our building, and it would saturate the carpet, saturate the door jambs and the baseboards. Take several days for us to dry it out using dehumidifiers and fans. So, you know, both kind of a hazard for clients coming in, a hazard as far as mold issues and rot issues. And then also, you know, nobody wants water coming in their building or their home. We had these permanent sandbags that were quite lovely aesthetically at our front, going out our front door to kind of help block the walkway from the flooding. So this was an ongoing issue that we'd had for quite a while. In addition to that, we had some landscaping that was older in front of our building that really didn't represent the principles that we try to teach out of our office. So a lot of non-native shrubs that really weren't of any benefit to the ecosystem. A lot of them were suffering from root rot and other diseases, obviously from the flooding issues, and they weren't aesthetically pleasing or a sustainable choice. So we kind of had multiple goals with this project, and one of my goals was also to practice what we preach and to show, you know, some better practices and some better choices that people can use in their own landscapes. So our response to this issue, Jess Brown, the stormwater specialist with Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant, and I had talked about this issue for a little while, and she was able to acquire a 319H EPD administered grant for us that sponsored several projects, but this was one of them. And with that partnership, we also looped in the Camden County government, who I, as a cooperative extension employee, work very closely with because we are jointly funded by the county and the university. And also, this is a county building and county property. So, of course, we had to have their buy-in on the project. The county was super supportive, excited about the project and on board, and honestly offered us more than we asked for even. So the county's part of the partnership. They supplied 4 public works employees and their labor for the day to help us dig out and build the bioretention cell. They cleared out the old landscaping and in all 3 areas, only one of which is part of this stormwater infrastructure, but we'll briefly touch on the other areas in a minute. They helped us dig out the bioretention cell. They brought the heavy equipment and operated it. They also donated the triple wash sand that we used along with repurposed topsoil to build the bioretention cell. So they were really great partners. You know, like I said, provided materials, some of the materials where they were able, heavy equipment use, which is could have been a big expense for us, as well as labor, which is always super helpful. Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant, led by Jess Brown, of course, provided the design. She had an intern working with her who she oversaw, who engineered and designed the bioretention cell. And of course, they provide technical expertise along the way, as well as labor. And then our part as cooperative extension, I provided labor and then also the plant selection and planting. So our bioretention cell that you can continue to see in process here was engineered to have a 5-inch ponding depth. We have a very high water table here at the coast. A lot of places in our county, it's at about 18 inches, some places less. So we had a 5-inch ponding depth on the bioretention cell, also a channel drain for the runoff, the intersection. You can't quite see it in this picture on the bottom, but there's this roof of the little stoop over our door, and then there's the main roof to the building, and they intersect there. So there's a great deal of impervious surface runoff at that junction. So Jess also incorporated a channel drain for the runoff from the intersection of those rooftops. Even though it didn't need to be quite this large, we went ahead and utilized the full space and made it 262 square feet for the footprint, and offset at 3 feet from the building foundation as well. The native plants that we incorporated in there, because one of the goals that I had as an extension agent was to show people things they could integrate better into their own stormwater systems or just native landscapes. And we have a lot of wet and poorly drained areas here, even if you're not implementing a stormwater practice per se. So we integrated some of the native plants were swamp sunflower, some of our native hibiscus like seashore mallow, blue-eyed grass, Stokes aster, white wild indigo, black-eyed Susan or rudbeckia, and sand cord grass. We also had some pink muley grass, but that was more kind of on the border, on the corners. So you can kind of see our in progress here. And even when we weren't finished with the bioretention cell yet, it was already starting to do its job. If you can tell in this picture, it's quite full of water, even though we hadn't even finished applying the rock and some of the final touches to it. So down the road with this project, we're kind of, COVID, I think, set everybody back on everything. So whereas we were looking to finish this project in the spring, we got the bioretention cell dug out, but before we could get it completed, we shut down for COVID, which put us behind schedule a bit. And we ended up planting in the middle of summer, which was not the ideal time to be planting and spreading mulch and rock, but it worked out, and we didn't suffer much plant loss either. But there's a few things we're still trying to wrap up. In fact, currently this week, I'm working on finishing up the construction and painting of our rain barrels. We have 2 locations that will have rain barrels just to integrate some other practices for in the landscape for homeowner education and use. So we have 1 rain barrel that will go in this area that's kind of blank right here. This picture was taken shortly after we planted of our other 2 beds that don't incorporate the bioretention cell. So they don't look quite full and pretty yet, but they're starting to come out this spring. So they should look a lot better this year. But we do have 1 rain barrel that will go in this area at the intersection of the 2 roofs on the opposite side of the bioretention cell. We have another one that will go back in a corner in this back bed. It'll be kind of slightly behind that large crepe myrtle, so that people can see how they could integrate those into their landscape as well, whether they have gutters or not, which we do not on our building. We're also in the process currently of, we have signage that's in production. We will have 2 signs that have been designed by a graphic designer. 1 sign, if you can see where our little stoop comes out, it will hang down here. And if you are facing the front door, if you look through it, it is a translucent sign that basically shows you where you can see through it and see the bioretention cell. It'll show you cutaways and show you the different components and how it was built and how it's structured and functions. Our second sign will go in between these two windows on this brick wall and give more information about stormwater management and our bioretention cell. I also plan to create some brochures for the landscape, both with like a native plant guide of what we have in the landscape and what it's suitable for, as well as kind of a seasons and reasons in the landscape. So things like, you know, why we're okay with some dead plant material available in the wintertime because it provides habitat for pollinators and wildlife, or why we leave some stems cut 12 inches above the ground for solitary nesting bees, some different things like that, of kind of accepting the natural cycle of your landscape and incorporating more of those sustainable practices in. So our plans for educational use, even though this has already just naturally gotten some use, we did have some, or do have some bigger plans for when we can go back to doing some more in-person programming. I do plan to have an open house of the landscape, and once all the signage and everything is in place, and we can kind of showcase the different practices that we've got going on here. Also, we usually have stormwater and rain barrel workshops about once a year or once every few years. So we can incorporate some more of those and use the landscape as a teaching tool. Also, I teach in non-COVID years, teach a master naturalist class every year that we can utilize the landscape for that program. Also, we can use it for master gardener tours and talks. The biggest component is self-guided education. So our goal with this project overall was to mitigate a stormwater issue we were having, but also to have this serve as a demonstration site. We have hundreds of people that come to our office every year as a public service and outreach office. They come for programming. Sometimes they come just to get information or to ask questions. So, you know, every person who passes through our doors or comes up to our building will see this landscape and ask questions potentially about it, or also just pick up on some practices that they could utilize at home. Also, a lot of the advice that I give, this will be a helpful way to showcase what it looks like in practice instead of just, you know, in theory, and give people some ideas in real life. Another aspect as well is we have another project I've been working on, which is a sustainable landscape project, the Georgia Green Landscape Stewards Program, which is a statewide sustainable landscape program. So I think we may also create some YouTube videos for our YouTube channel of this landscape and its practices and what putting the stormwater lessons in the landscape program into practice looks like. So kind of a how-to video sort of thing. I'm sure too, as we go along, there'll be some more ideas that come up for educational uses. And, you know, I really see this as a project that has a lot of potential. It's been really great working with Jess at Marine Extension, and then also with the county on this. And I think it's benefited all the partners, as well as helping our stormwater issues. So yeah, we have not, our office has been staying nice and dry. You can see in this picture, yet again, our bioretention cell doing its job, which it gets plenty of opportunity to do because we've had no shortage of rain this year on the coast. So with that, I will wrap up. And I look forward to the session where if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them. And if for some reason I don't get a chance to then, or you'd like to reach out to me privately about this project, my email is right here on the screen. It's jkwarren@uga.edu. Thank you.